Good morning, everyone. This is Silver. I decided to do the latest update on Syn Lock via video to help simplify the explanation of how things work. So I'm going to do the explanation of how Syn Lock works using these 8 launches. 6 of them are player 1. We'll call the purple person we'll call player 1, and the red person we'll call player 2. And so this is an example of their launches. Now, in this case, I'm only using a single launch, but you can imagine this is them dropping their entire scope in these 8 positions on the map. But for the simplicity of how this is going to work, I'm just going to use the example of one launch at each of these locations at the times that are specified. So the way Syn Lock works now is slightly different than what I published in the Syn Lock Day 3 update, where we were dividing the world into grids. I realized after having gone through the beginning of that implementation that there was a fairly significant flaw in that it didn't include time. And so we really need to have time as a factor when we consider you're deploying next to someone. And so I've changed the way we implement Syn Lock. It's very similar in concept to what I had originally thought I would do when I published the last blog post, but it's much better now. It will have a much better representation of the fact that you were actually deploying with someone. So let me start off by describing how this will work. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull everyone's launches for the last 24 hours. So player 1, player 2 will pull both of those launches for the last 24 hours, and then we're going to step through every launch. And so we start off here at 4:57 for player 1, and what we do is we look and see, show me all the player launches that were within a 15-minute window, plus or minus, and were there any of my friend, player 2 in this example, was my friend within my proximity within 15 minutes. And in this case, you see that at 4:57, yes, your friend was deploying in the vicinity at 5:05, which is within 15 minutes. And so we will flag this launch as being a kind of a paired launch. If we go to the next launch at 4:59, we see that this launch, yes, did have a friend, the second person, player 2, in the vicinity within the 15-minute window, and so this one's marked as a paired launch. At 5:05, which is now player 2, which is the next launch within the cycle, we check to see, did you have a friend within the vicinity within 15 minutes? Yes, this is a paired launch. Player 1 again, next launch, nobody in the circle, so this is considered a clear launch. Again, move down the line, another clear launch, no one in the vicinity. You can see here at 5:22, now player 2 has moved from their position that they were standing in, but still no one within the vicinity. 5:23, no one within the vicinity, and now finally we do 5:30, and player 2 has no one in the vicinity. So as a result of these launches, we can see that 4 launches out of 6 were clear for player 2, for player 1, and half launches for player 2 were clear. The new Syn Lock will work so that if 50% of your launches, over 50% of your launches were paired, you are eligible for Syn Lock. So if either player has over 50% paired launches, you'll be eligible for Syn Lock. We've also added a slight, I guess the best way to describe it would be buffer. If you are close to the bubble, so let's say that you're within maybe 40-45% of your launches were paired, we'll also do an evaluation of were many of your launches far apart. So this might be the example where I launch half at home and half at work, and I'm not exactly sure where my 50% is. If your home and work is a significant distance apart, we're going to track that, and we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and we'll push you over the edge so that you do not get paired. You do not get Syn Locked. I'm not ready to say what this padding looks like or how it works yet. Just keep in mind that if you keep half of your launches away from someone else within a 15-minute window, that you will not get paired. We're going to watch this very closely, and the buffer will probably shift a little bit over time to help avoid people getting paired when they move from to work to home. Now, one of the things that I hear a lot of people say is, well, this 2 kilometers it's ridiculous. It's too big. I live in a populated area. I work with a bunch of people. 2 kilometers is way too big. I'm getting paired with my neighbors or even people down the street. You need to fix that. And we are going to fix that. But it requires an update on the clients. We can't just do it on the server. So what we're going to do in the next release of the clients, or we actually have we have a release going, so it may not make the next release. But what we're going to do very soon is we're going to start sending back accuracy information when we send back launch data. And with this information, we'll be able to say, well, this person had an actual GPS lock, or they had cell phone triangulation, and so we know that their accuracy is within 100 meters. And if we can get that information from the phones, now suddenly we can take this very large circle, which has to account for primarily iPads, who are getting their location based on their IP address. We can take this very large circle and we can reduce this circle down to a very close proximity. This will make it much easier for students playing on a college campus, colleagues that are working together at work or in a downtown metropolitan area, to avoid getting sync locked if they have good accuracy of their phone. Now, if you're buried within the bowels of a gigantic building and your location accuracy isn't very good, well, there's not much we're going to be able to do about that. But if you get good, tight location accuracy, that should significantly reduce the pairings that are happening with someone you probably don't even know. And so we're going to start working on that immediately with the iPhone, the Android, and the Windows Phone, so that with every launch, we are also sending back a location accuracy so that we can shrink this circle and further reduce the chance of you being paired with somebody else. And so in this case, you'll see that I would not have any pairings with these 2 players here because the location accuracy is very small. Now there's another component of the new Syn Lock, which I did publish in the Day 3 update, which did make it into this release, and that is the idea that when you separate, you're no longer sync locked. And so that is in the code now. If you get paired with somebody at home, your family members, your wife, your husband, your kids, and then you go to work, that sync lock, assuming you leave the zone, which I realize not everybody works away from their home. Some people work near their home. But if you leave the zone, then the sync lock will no longer have any impact on you. So if you have separation, you launch, the person you're sync locked with launches, then the sync lock will have no impact on you because you've shown separation. However, when you come back together, come home at night, if your infection has not expired, you will be once again sync locked and you'll be sharing your overheat metrics. So those 2 things are in place today. I actually pushed that about 10 hours ago, and in that time, we've only had, I think, 15 sync lock pairings happen. I was on a group meet chat this morning with some folks in the UK who were very concerned about the density of the players in the UK and how everything is much more closer together than it is in the US. And we checked the database, and at this time, right now, there isn't a single person in the UK that is currently under sync lock. So, and of course, none of them happened in the last 8 hours, even with the new engine. So this is better. It's better than it was before. It certainly helps people get away from the people they're sync locked with so they can actually deploy and get into Steam. And it should help us reduce unfair sync locking. Now, one other aspect to this that is in here but probably is not very obvious is that we're looking at 15-minute windows. If you and your wife are deploying together at home all weekend long, and you're saying, well, this is still unfair for families, the only deployments that will count for sync lock will be deployments that are within the same 15-minute window. And so if you are careful about it, families can still play together because you can make sure that you're separating most of your launches by 15 minutes. And remember, it's half of your launches have to be paired. So even if you overlap half of your launches, you should still be okay with the sync lock. Now, I'm going to address one big concern that I think a lot of people are probably going to have as a rebuttal to this, to say, well, Silver, all you're doing here is you're telling multiscopers how to continue cheating by making sure that their launches are 15 minutes apart. Well, honestly, that's the reason why we are where we are. People were convinced that other people were multiscoping. We would look at the logs and say, look, none of their launches are together. They look like 2 different people. And so this system is not going to catch multi-scopers if you maintain a 15-minute difference in your launches, but neither would have the old system. And so, we're no worse off than what we were before by having this 15-minute window, but it does help families. The other thing is that what we're really trying to stop is we're really trying to stop that person who's got 2, 3, 4 devices lined up on their desk, and they're launching one right after the other right down the line. This system stops that. They'll get sync locked every time if that's the way they're deploying when they're multi-scoping. But when you have to pick up your phone, deploy, set it down, walk away, come back 15 minutes later, pick up the second phone, launch, walk away, come back 15 minutes later, pick up the third phone, this creates a substantial break in human behavior. And we're really slowing down the multi-scopers by doing it this way. And if you're like me, you pick up a phone, you walk away 15 minutes later, by the time you actually remember to come back, or you get busy with work or email or kids or whatever it is, the chances that you're going to come back every 15 minutes are really low. You might do that for a half an hour, 2 hours, but throughout the whole day, that's unlikely to happen for most people. I feel really good about where we're at right now with Syn Lock. The number of syncs that have happened in the database is substantially lower than it was with the old method. And once we get this proximity, the accuracy, the location accuracy into the clients, we should really cut down on legitimate locks with people you work with and your neighbors. So we're working on it. We're working to make it better. I feel really good about this. We're going to add more in here. Finally, I want to address one additional change from the blog post that I published on Syn Lock Day 3. In that blog post, I had mentioned that we were going to go back 4 days instead of just 24 hours so that families would be less likely to get Syn Locked on the weekend. After we implemented it that way and we did some testing, we found that actually if we do that, then it makes Syn Locking possible all day Saturday and Sunday, and you can't get caught if you have legitimate activity on Thursday and Friday. We didn't want to create a situation where having legitimate activity on Thursday and Friday made it so that you could multi-scope all you wanted on Saturday and Sunday. We tested with someone who was multi-scoping a lot because they had bought the inoculation and they were using the inoculation to kind of pay back someone who had Syn Locked them. And we also tested it against several husband-wife pairs, father-son pair, and 2 neighbor pairs. These 5 different sets of people had all been Syn Locked. They were legitimately activity. All 5 of them passed the new Syn Lock test with only 24 hours of activity. And so I feel better about the 24-hour period now that we have the new rules about the 15-minute window. We will continue to watch this, but I'm going to keep the window at 24 hours because we saw that legitimate people were passing and multi-scopers were getting caught. So we're going to keep it the way it is for now, and we'll continue to evaluate. I've spent a lot of time talking to GroupMe folks and on the forums chat the last few days. I will continue to do that. I want to know how things are going with people. We'll be watching who gets synced very closely and see what adaptations we can make. So with that, I hope that this helps alleviate some concerns of people about Syn Lock. I feel very good about this doing a very good job of catching the people that we would have caught through manual review. And hopefully this will give the players that are out there playing legitimately a little bit of a reprieve from what they've seen the last 4 days, and they won't be impacted quite so severely as they have been. Thank you for your time. I appreciate all of the comments that I've gotten, and we will continue to listen for more.